14-year-old, and we as a society, and you mentioned at the outset, Gene, that they haven't made a determination as to whether to charge him as an adult or not. I think that's a critical thing that needs to be discussed too. Now, what Ohio has is apparently you don't have automatic transfers to adult court predicated upon the type of crime. In fact, the court declared that unconstitutional. There has to be some type of hearing to determine whether it's in the best interest of society that occur. But even if that were to be the case, now you have the battle of the expert. You heard Jenna Kravitz, as an expert herself, say, well, wait, the call is strange. On the one hand, the defense may use that in the event that there's some insanity plea to say, he's talking about me and Jeff killed her. You know, this sounds like something's amiss and awry. As a result of that, how could he appreciate the wrongfulness of his conduct? On the other hand, Jenna Kravitz, she said, hey, that sounds a bit strange. Why? Because people generally have memory lapses in that regard, and so it may be a bit contrived. And so there would be a lot, of course, for the defense to overcome if they went forward with regard to an insanity defense.
And he knows what's wrong. He knows the difference between right and wrong.
Right.
Brian, I want you to listen to this next piece of the 911 call. I think you could argue that it's very incriminating against him. Listen to this.
All right, now, why did you hurt your mom, or why did Jess hurt your mom?
He was always tired of her. She always did drugs, and she told her, like, ignore me. Like, once she hit me, and she was just, she was done.
She was done. She kept ignoring me once she hit me. So now we don't have Jeff. He's talking as the young man who's the defendant right here.
Right. The Jeff defense is falling apart because another big reason, there's now motive.
Yeah.
There's a motive for him to kill this woman. He feels like she is with his father now, and she's ignoring him or abusing him. So that's the problem with this defense, is now there's a motive. But like you said earlier, Gene, the devil's going to be in the details on this. They're going to delve into his background. Is there a history of mental health illness? Is there a history of him taking any medication? If there's not, then this defense, I don't think, is going to fly.
Yeah. We have learned that there were no behavioral issues that were spotted in the classroom, all right? Joey Jackson, the main defense here was she didn't cause the death. She didn't know about this.
Falls on deaf ears, Gene, and here's why. You know, we all learn about something in law school called the thin skull plaintiff, right? And that's a person or a victim who they may have some pre-existing condition. But the fact that she had some heart condition doesn't excuse your conduct, which ultimately led to her death. And so this case was as much about what we saw, the videotapes and the facts, as about the law, because the defense's argument was, wait a second, you can't hold her accountable for killing her as a result of this pre-existing condition. And the judge said, no, of course you can, because it was your gross deviation from the standard of care by attacking her in that way that ultimately led to the death. And just to be clear for the viewers, of course, there's a distinction between murder, which is the intentional act to kill someone, and when you engage in conduct, which is likely to cause the result, even though, Gene, you didn't mean to do it. And that's where you get the criminally negligent homicide.
That's right. Criminal negligence that caused the death, though, right?
Yeah.
Brian, let me ask you this. They were tried as juveniles. All right, so it's not a conviction. It's that she was determined to be responsible. Should they have been tried as an adult? And what should the punishment be? Because she's a juvenile, and I'm talking about the main girl here. It can be nothing. It can be like a probation. It can be like a supervision. It can be in jail for a little bit of time. What does she deserve?
Well, I'm on the fence with this because I think young adults deserve a chance for rehabilitation. And this is a horrible tragedy, and I think this young woman should be held responsible for the death. But I think maybe a few years of incarceration and then given an opportunity to rehabilitate and live a more productive life and use this as a platform then maybe to prevent bullying in the future.
Carl, you were in the courtroom. What's the demeanor that you saw from these young girls?
There was very little observable reaction from any of the girls.
Really? So they didn't seem sad, remorseful?
I can't comment on that. I can't determine whether they were sad based upon no reaction.
So no reaction is a reaction. No reaction at all. Joey, what do you think?
You know, listen, a lot of times children, not that this excuses it at all, but they know not what they do. I mean, I'm certain they didn't mean to kill, or at least I should say her, because the other one was acquitted. The second one found responsible for conspiracy, but not convicted of it.
Yeah.
But, you know, children do things that adults ultimately do not, and they just don't understand the severity and the significance and what it could lead to. And in this case, it led to their death. And so, but you have to wonder, you know, we're talking about all these stories. The first story involving, you know, someone who kills someone who's a young child. These kids are young. What are our young people doing? What is the larger issue that's causing beatdowns
Exactly. So how do you stop it but have a sentence that can deter?
That's a great point. It's a great point. And, you know, as a society, we have to determine, what do we do with children? Juvenile and the whole system of justice there, Gene, is to rehabilitate, because you think there's a redeeming quality. These kids are young. They've got a long way to go. You can't throw them away forever. And to the extent that they'll be out in society, you want them to be productive and you want them to lead lives that'll be law-abiding, significant, and contributory to society.
You know, I want to read to you what the judge said, because I think this is important before we leave this. The verdict. This was a bench trial, and the judge said, quote, "The attack on Amy Joyner Francis had known potential consequences and risks. I purposefully used the word attack because that is what the evidence established. Even reasonable 16-year-olds have standards. Trinity Carr's attack on Amy Joyner Francis and her failure to perceive the risk of death is a gross deviation from the standard." And that judge also said it was a brutal attack.